Watercolor techniques tailored to your project. You'll need your watercolor technique paper, your paint, couple paint brushes, water jar, paint palette, paper towel, mixing chart, glaze chart, and your reference photo. This will help you tailor your practice to your project. Before you begin, write your name and period at the top of your paper. Then check your photo reference for colors. Work your way through the colors listed across the top. Make sure to check your photo reference for colors that may better match your photo. Let your mixing chart be your guide especially for the colors that are combination between others, such as red-orange, yellow-orange, yellow-green, blue-green, blue-violet, etc. Getting in the habit of using your mixing chart will save you loads of time in the future. Go ahead, work your way through the colors. You'll want to change out your water as it gets dirty. That way your colors stay true. For next up, check your photo reference again. This time, we're going to be doing a flat wash. You want a flat area color. So check the area that you want and then find the color that you want to create on your mixing chart. Go ahead and create a flat wash in the box provided. Remember, a flat wash is solid all the way across. As you work across, keep adding a paint and water mixture to the bead of paint on water on your paper and pull it down. When you get to the bottom, use your brush as a little vacuum to suck up any excess water. Next up is the graded wash. Check your photo reference for an area that transitions from light to dark or dark to light. Once you find your area, go to your mixing chart and find the color that best represents the area in your photo reference. Remember, a graded wash goes from dark to light, or light to dark. In this case, we're adding a heavier mix of paint to water and going back in and laying more water into the bead of paint on our paper. And as we add more and more water, it becomes lighter and lighter and transitions down the space. Continue adding water, and then when you reach the end of the space, draw off your brush and use it like a little vacuum cleaner to suck up the excess. Next, we're moving on to wet and wet. Check your photo reference for an area that looks like it's just a mix of mottled color. Once you find your area, check your mixing chart or glaze chart for 2 colors at least that you would like to use. You may do more than 2. After you have chosen your colors, go ahead and wet the entire area with a very lightly tinted water or just plain water. Then dab your brush into wet paint and tap it into the area. The colors will mix and weave together. You can add more colors if you want, and you're basically going to let them go. When you're done, stop touching it and move on. Next up is a variegated wash. This has a mix of 2 different colors. Go ahead, check your photo reference for an area that combines 2 colors that fade into one. Then, check your mixing chart to see what 2 colors best match your photo reference. Remember to mix your colors on your palette first, 1 of each, then 1 together. Then, go ahead and start with the first color. Work your way down about a third way down the space. Then, start adding in the mixture of the 2. Go a little bit further, and then add the third. Just like the other washes, once you reach the end of the space, go ahead, draw off your brush, and then use it like a little vacuum to suck up the excess water. Next up is a glazed wash. This is where one color is laid down, dried, and another color is placed over the top. Go ahead and check your photo reference for an area that looks like colors could be layered. Once you find your area, you'll check your glaze chart this time. Remember, this is one color layered over the other. Pick which color needs to go down first, then begin with a flat wash of that first color. You'll do a normal flat wash. Once you get to the end of the space, go ahead, draw off your brush, suck up the excess water, and then let it dry. Next up is embossed. So check out your photo reference for an area that has an even amount of color and then areas that have darker lines within it. What we'll be doing is taking the end of a paintbrush and pushing in little edges into our paper to make little canals for the paint to pull in. First, paint an area on your paper that matches the section of your photo reference. Make sure that it's not dry. It has to have a little bit of water added to it. Then take the back of your paintbrush and begin to draw. You are pushing in the paper fibers and creating little canals for the water and the paint to seep into. Now, if you don't have enough water on your paper, you can go back in with your paintbrush and add a little bit more paint and water, and the paint will seep into those areas. Next up is scratch out. So check your photo reference for something, an area on your photo that looks scratchy, or for instance feathers, and then go ahead and check your mixing chart for the colors you might want to use. Once you have your colors mixed up, go ahead and create a flat wash on your paper. Do a flat wash for now, then you can really see the effect later. You'll be creating a flat wash and then allowing this to dry, so we'll have to come back to this one. Moving on to plastic wrap. And this looks really crunchy and textury when it's dry, so check your photo reference for an area where the color is crunchy looking. Once you find your area, go back and check your mixing chart again, and then mix your colors up. What we'll be doing is using plastic wrap. This also works for bubble wrap or other objects. So grab your colors, decide what you want, mix them on your palette, then lay them in. Here I'm painting a very liquidy wet and wet of very lightly tinted green water. And then I'm going back in with some darker greens and putting them in, just tapping them in to get some mottled looking colors. So this is wet and wet, but we're going to add plastic wrap in a minute. So when you're happy with your color, go ahead, grab your plastic wrap and crunch it up. Then you're going to lay it in the wet paint. Push it down so that it touches the paper. You will see the paint be pushed away. This displacement is what causes the texture. Once you're happy with it, leave it alone. We have to allow this to dry completely before the effect takes place. And don't worry if your plastic wrap rises off your paper, you can tap it back in, but don't bump it too much. You want it to stay touching your paper. Next up is soap. So check your photo reference for an area that is very smooth or one that looks like it could have bubbles added to it. So once you find your area, look at your mixing chart, mix your colors on your palette, and then you're going to add some dishwashing soap. So this is the kind you dump in the sink, and you're going to squirt some into your palette. Then you're going to use your brush to mix up. So I mixed it quite a lot and got some bubbles, so mine is going to be bubbly, but you can mix it less and get a very smooth texture. Once you're happy with your mixture, you're going to paint it in the area. It's very goopy, so the soap has changed the viscosity, the thickness of the water, and it will apply differently. You can smear it around more, it will dry slower. So go ahead and fill your space. If you have areas that it begins to puddle, you can draw with your brush and absorb some of that water again. But it'll be a completely different texture than other areas. And if you want more bubbles, just mix it more and bubbles should pop up, and then you'll be able to paint with bubbles. Next, we have resist. So you'll need a crayon, you'll need some wax, oil pastel works really good, and even some tape. So grab your choice for resist and let's get started. If you're using tape, go ahead and place a piece of tape down on your paper. If you're using crayon or oil pastel, draw a design. You want to push down hard enough so that there is a layer of wax or oil pastel on your paper. Once you have placed some tape, crayon, or oil pastel in the box, go ahead and grab some paint from your palette. In this case, I'm just using paint that is already mixed, and I'm placing it in the box. I'm covering the entire box, going right over the tape, right over the crayon, and the oil pastel. It's best if you try out each method. That way you can see what you like the most. So once you have put the paint in, stop touching it and leave it alone. This has to dry. Now it's time to go back and check out what we can do with scratch out. So grab something sharp, a paper clip, a scratch tool works really good, anything relatively sharp will be great, and scratch through that dried layer of paint. So you're going to scratch through and reveal the white paper underneath. It's great for popping highlights and getting texture. Now let's jump over here to mixed media. This is exactly what it sounds like. You're adding more art media, mixing media with your watercolor. So try out a few different types. So graphite, pen, Sharpie, colored pencil, you name it. Try it all if you want to in this little space. So test a few ideas. You can add the media first, then paint over the top, or you can go ahead and paint and then layer the mixed media in. Basically, you're just going to play. Mixed media is amazing in layers, so you could let this dry and then, when you're done with the other boxes on the page, come back and add more over the top. Now to do stamping. So you can take any material that you can add paint on and then just press it into the paper. So in this case, I'm trying out some bubble wrap. Some material works better than others. You can try paper towel. You can even try your fingerprint, and you're just going to dip your object in paint or paint onto your object and then place it on your paper. It's good for blotting things. It's good for smearing things and making texture. So grab a few different objects and try it out. Now we come to a favorite of many, splatter paint. So dip your brush into a little bit of paint, lay it close to your paper so you don't splatter anybody else's, and then take the tip of your finger and gently bend the bristles of your brush back. They will fling forward and splatter your paper. Now let's try some salt. You'll need to make sure that you have plenty of water added into your paint. If your paint is very dry, sometimes salt has a hard time working. Go ahead and place an area of paint in the space on your paper. You can try out thin layers and thicker layers. When you're happy with it, grab you some salt. All different types of salt works. I have sea salt, iodized salt right here. You can try rock salt, Epsom salt, but what you're going to do is you're going to sprinkle the salt into the paint, and you will see the paint congregate around the salt. Now the salt will dissolve, but it will also draw the paint to it. It also will displace the paint, and so that's why you see very light areas around the salt. You can also paint with salt water, and as the water and the salt dissolve, it seeps into the fibers of the paper and creates actual texture in the paper itself. This method also works if you would like to try adding noodles. So noodles work not by dissolving, but they actually work by displacing the paint. So if you want to try some noodles, drop some noodles in there, make sure you have enough water so that it actually has a chance to work around the noodle. And what you have to do is leave them in until everything is completely dry. Now we're going to do some dry brush. So you'll want to wipe your brush off. Your brush should be damp, not wet. It's exactly what it sounds like. So your brush is relatively dry, and dip it in a little paint, make sure it's not dripping, and then swipe it across your paper, and it gives really lovely hairy and feathery texture. We have one more to do. Remember that glazed wash? That should be nice and dry by now. So go back and add on top that second color. You can try two if you want. What you're going to do is mix up your color and then drag it across the first one. So be careful, do not scrub, because that first color might start to lift. So I'm adding in one, and then I decide to add in a darker layer of color. And as you add more water, what you might notice, if you have non-staining paint, some of the paint may lift up. So be careful about how much water you have. It depends on the look that you're going for. Then hop over to the resist and remove your tape. It should also be nice and dry. Take your fingernail and pick off your tape. Be careful, don't peel back your paper, and you'll see the area that the tape protected. Ta-da! If you want, you can go back over the mixed media again and add more layers of mixed media in watercolor. Check your plastic wrap to see if it's dry. If it's dry, go ahead and remove it. Check out the awesome texture that you made. And then you can go ahead and pick out the noodles. These might take a little bit longer to dry, but when they are, just pick it off and you can see the lovely texture. Great job! So now you have tried out different watercolor techniques that are tailored to your project. When you get stuck and need some ideas, come back and reference this sheet. It will help you out.